Our guests today are Carroll Smith and Chuck Seets. Jamie is Associate Director for EY Center for Board Matters. She's in Denver. Chuck is EY Americas Assurance Cybersecurity Leader. He's in Atlanta. Chuck coordinates a profession-wide, auditor-wide effort working through the Center for Audit Quality to elevate engagement on cybersecurity. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. Jamie and Chuck, cybersecurity disclosures, one of the hot topics now for at least 5 years, and it will continue to grow most likely for as long as we live. So Jamie, the EY Center for Board Matters has now done a study for 3 years, I believe. And so what have you been seeing? How are the cybersecurity disclosures changing year over year for, I guess, the Fortune 100, right?
Yes, Fortune 100. And Brock, if I may just take a step back to give a little more context to our work here. So as you said, this is our third year of doing this research. We are looking at the Fortune 100 generally because they're viewed as leaders in corporate governance disclosures as they continue to evolve. And we undertook this effort starting in 2018, really to help inform boards, executives, investors, regulators, and other governance stakeholders who had been expressing an interest in better understanding how are companies guarding against, planning for, and importantly, responding to cybersecurity incidents. So then, as you noted, 3 years later, here we are, and the stakes have only gotten far higher. So in today's world of remote work and increasing online interactions and new disruptive technologies, a company's ability to secure its virtual ecosystem is more important than ever to value creation and resilience. So in terms of what we're seeing, I would say overall, we're finding continued opportunity really for companies to strengthen their cybersecurity disclosures and better demonstrate accountability and engagement on this issue, and really build stakeholder trust and demonstrate how they're cybersecurity, managing it and overseeing it at the board level as a critical enterprise risk and also as a strategic opportunity. And so in terms of the specific data, our findings are organized across 3 areas where we focus the research. So one is on board oversight. So how is cybersecurity oversight structured at the committee level, director qualifications, and also what are companies disclosing about management reporting to the board? The second area is the risk factor disclosures in the 10K. So what are companies saying about cyber and data privacy as risk factors? And then the third area is risk management. So what are companies disclosing about how they're mitigating cybersecurity risks, responding to cybersecurity incidents, and how are they engaging with external security consultants? And I would say we've observed modest increases across most of the disclosures we're tracking in terms of where we're seeing the most significant changes, both over the past year, but also across the course of our work in this area. It's definitely been the most change in the area around board oversight, and specifically around committee structures and responsibilities and director qualifications. So looking first at committee responsibilities. So this year, 87% of Fortune 100 companies disclosed that they charged at least one board level committee with cybersecurity responsibilities. So that's up from 74% in 2018. And audit committees really remain the primary committee of choice here. This year, around 2/3 of boards assigned cybersecurity oversight responsibilities to the audit committee. That's up from 59% in 2018. And last year, we had actually observed an increase in boards giving cybersecurity oversight responsibilities to non-audit committees, usually the risk or the technology committee, but that percentage dipped back down this year. So it really does look like audit does remain the primary committee overseeing this. And I'll also just note here that among the audit committees charged with cyber oversight, about 2/3 include that oversight responsibility in the charter, about 1/3 doesn't. So there's definitely opportunity for some of these audit committees to refresh their charters to more formalize these cybersecurity oversight responsibilities. So that's what we're seeing across committee oversight. In terms of director qualifications, this year, 58% of Fortune 100 companies included cybersecurity as an area of expertise sought on the board or cited in a director bio. And that's up from just 39% in 2018. But I would say the meaning of this data is difficult to interpret. For example, some companies in 1 year will ascribe cybersecurity expertise to a certain director in the proxy statement and then not assign that qualification, and then will not assign that qualification to the same director in another proxy statement. And I would also add that there's considerable variability in what companies consider to be cybersecurity expertise. It's hard to generalize what that means. We'll see some directors who are former CISOs who very clearly are bringing a rich tech background to their role on the board, and then other directors who may have completed a cybersecurity oversight certification course or have broad business experience with companies that have faced cybersecurity risks. It's just hard to generalize. I would say overall, what the data is telling us is that companies are certainly paying more attention to noting director experience or expertise related to cybersecurity in the proxy statement. And then aside from these areas where we're seeing the most significant changes, I also want to highlight another notable finding from our view is actually the continued lack of disclosures related to cyber readiness simulations and the use of independent third-party advisors. So this year, only 7% of companies disclosed that they performed cyber incident simulations or tabletop exercises, and only 16% disclosed using an external independent advisor to support management. And Brock, as you know, company disclosures, they really serve as an engagement tool and a way to communicate the company's message to a broad spectrum of investors. It's a way to build support for the board, build trust in management. And in today's environment where online interactions are really becoming the norm, a company's data privacy practices and data security and building trust around that really is a strategic imperative. So from our view, for companies that are performing these cyber readiness simulation exercises and that are engaging with independent outside experts, it's a missed opportunity if they're not disclosing that to stakeholders.
Yeah, it's interesting how you talk about some years a director might be listed as an expert in cybersecurity and then all of a sudden not be. And I think it's more, I actually just taped a big guide about director qualifications this morning with a pair of people and talking about the parity among directors of qualifications so that everyone gets 6 or 7 and it's not one person with 10 and another person with 2. So maybe someone dropping that qualification, that their expertise in that area really hasn't changed, but it's more of the politics of the amount, the level of disclosure about each director in the proxy. Or maybe that person has forgotten everything they learned. You never know.
Yeah, Brock, I think what you pointed out, there's really no governing standard on what makes somebody an expert or not. So they may choose to focus in on other things for other reasons and not call out somebody's cybersecurity expertise, even though they may have it, or vice versa. Somebody may have it called out and they chose to eliminate it to focus on their experience in distribution or global matters, whatever it might be. There's just no governing standard that I know of.
And I should mention that this team is taping another big guide about cyber readiness for the board, and we'll talk about certifications and that sort of thing soon enough. So Jamie, how are some companies using cybersecurity as one of the metrics in executive compensation and executive pay?
Right. So we did find a handful of financial companies that are including cybersecurity related considerations in the executive pay programs. But I want to be clear, we didn't see specific cybersecurity targets or goals attached to a pay program. It was more that cybersecurity considerations were one of a list of qualitative performance considerations for certain NEOs in their incentive pay programs. I will note that one company, though, did disclose that a cybersecurity incident was specifically recognized by the compensation committee in awarding pay, both in terms, obviously, of the negative impacts of that incident, but also in terms of the positive impacts and effectiveness of how management responded to the incident.
It'll be interesting to see in the future if eventually some clawbacks or have a provision in there that one of the triggers for a clawback is a breach that maybe could have otherwise been thwarted, although that would be maybe, I imagine it might be pretty difficult to build that in, but executive pay metrics are complicated and they're all difficult, or a lot of them are. They should be difficult. So Chuck, the EY report notes that not many companies disclose simulations, as Jamie just said. Does this align with what you're seeing in the market, and what role are the boards playing in these?
At this point in time, it does. I think what you're going to find over time is that there will be more and more participation in cyber breach simulation exercises by the board. Right now, the board will either observe management or will confirm that management has led such an exercise. In other instances, the board will actually participate alongside the C-suite executives and participate in the same exercise. Whether they're participating or observing, the key is that they need to be doing these rigorously and continuously, because the bad actors in cybersecurity, they change their tactics regularly. And so you can't do this just once a year and think you've covered it all. This needs to be something that the management team, ergo the board, they need to be doing it with some degree of regularity, whether it's twice a year, 4 times a year. It's up to the company and the board to decide. But I think over the course of 1 year, there's so many changes that take place, not only in what the bad actors are doing, but in what the company is being tasked to defend. Jamie alluded to this a moment ago. The attack surface for corporate America, with most employees working virtually, has expanded exponentially. So just the sheer magnitude of the job is causing some to say, wow, we need to do this with a higher degree of rigor than we've ever done it, and perhaps more regularly than we've ever done it.
And Chuck, you have such a unique background and a unique job in that you do get to speak firsthand with a lot of directors about cyber readiness. Based on those conversations over the years, what types of cybersecurity disclosure issues do directors tend to bring up?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword that most directors are concerned about. Obviously, you want to reassure your stakeholders that you're on top of the risk, and that's understandable. But there's also that fine line between reassuring your stakeholders and perhaps saying too much, either sharing what you're doing and the tactics that you're employing, or that you put a target on your back and that you invite the bad actors to want to show how good they are, and so they come after you as a way of proving their skill and acumen. So there's a lot of things for directors to have to worry about in that regard. Nonetheless, though, there's no question that corporate directors get the risk, they're focused on it, and as time will tell, and as some of the other things that Jamie has reported on, some of these numbers are moving targets. What may be 10% this year will be 20% next year. Right now we're looking at point-in-time data, and I think all of that data is starting to migrate simply because the risk is so pervasive in corporate America.
This has been a great discussion, and I'm sure hopefully you'll join us again next year, as well. This is the kind of thing that's still moving fast, even though it's been around now for a few years.